near my place. This is bourbon, right?
Yeah. So what he was saying is they fly the water in from Kentucky so that they can call it a real bourbon. Like, I guess Kentucky, like, it can only be bourbon if it's Kentucky water used in the mash, I guess. I'd love to get some commentary.
That worries me. Someone that could, that has tasted that much, that can
Mm,
tell.
right.
Like to me, it's all kind of the woo. I mean,
Yeah.
I can sip it and I enjoy
Mhm.
sipping it, but I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between this and a $2 bottle of whatever. I just
Yeah.
don't drink it enough.
Oh, okay. All right. Get the Cuddy Sark down then, you know. Um, I don't know. Maybe I'm just an East Coast snob, but you put some things in front of me and I taste them. I'm like, oh my gosh, get this out of here. I
Well,
two sips and yeah, I'm fed up with it. But yeah, but that's because snobbishness is just, deeply embedded in that Puritan culture of ours.
uh,
Yeah, yeah,
some
nothing.
beers I can, I can taste it, but
Mm,
um, when I was smoke jumping up in Missoula, a lot of those jumpers like to drink the microbrews, the really dark, dark stuff.
uh-huh.
And that just didn't sit well with me. So I kind of set a standard. If I can hold the beer up to the light and I can see the sunlight through it,
Yep.
I can drink it. But
Okay.
if I hold it up there and I can't see light through it, I probably shouldn't drink
You're
it.
talking about like the porters,
Oh
that
yeah,
sort of thing.
dark stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they drink that a lot.
Hmm.
I could sip it, but it just wasn't the same.
Okay, so Guinness is not your speed.
No,
Okay.
no. Coors Light or Bud Light, I'm a Wyoming boy. That's
Oh, okay. All
I
right. So you like, yeah, you drink plenty of water every day.
do. I do.
Yeah. Are we on right now, Tom, or are we?
I flipped us on
You
a
flipped us
minute
on.
ago.
Oh, okay. Deke, welcome.
Hi. Thanks.
Yeah, it's good to have you, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you contacted me about my car that I
Yeah.
wanted to sell because here we are. Wouldn't have happened otherwise.
My daughter's driving and she loves it.
Perfect.
She's already replaced the stereo and got her Apple Play in it or whatever in
Oh,
it. And I keep asking her, how's it doing? How's it running? She's running great. It's
yeah.
meeting her needs. And so down in hot St. George, and she can flip on the AC and
Mm,
zip
yes.
around the town.
Perfect.
Uh,
Excellent. Zipping around town, we see some of your art.
yeah,
You've got how many public works right now in Lander? I know the one at the high school.
the one at the high school. Um, there was another one on, I'm trying to think of the street. It's kind of down by, used to be the old Napa. There was an attorney that I knew from wrestling in high school. His name was Vance Countryman,
Okay.
and he had an office, and he had this big rock put out in the front of his office, and he wanted me to do this eagle sculpture. So I did a relief sculpture of an eagle, and then I brazed it or welded it on a quarter inch plate of steel, and then put the patina on it, and it was there for years. And I think he's retired now. It's still down there, but I think that's at two in Lander I
Okay.
can think of. But and then there's another one at Thermopolis, one out at Pavilion, the Cougars, and then the Bobcat in Thermopolis. I did two little pieces for St. Stephen's that sit outside their schools. Let's see, I did one for an Indian tribe down in Arizona, the Kaibab tribe. It was a Veterans Memorial piece.
Uh-huh.
Did another tiger for Grand Junction High School, and that one was installed last year. And then currently I'm working on one for Fort Washakie School,
Oh.
which is it's it's come along really, really on the side, and it pushes the envelope of, you know, having an eagle sculpture, but just, what you can do in bronze.
Hmm.
Because I think I haven't seen a piece like this that has this much of metal up in the air. It's going to take some engineering on the inside of the bronze to make sure it can handle the weight load, because bronze in itself is not strong enough to hold that kind of
Okay.
weight.
It's a fairly malleable
Mhm.
metal.
So, for example, the tiger in front of the high school, on the inside of that, on that front leg, there's a big steel pipe that runs through there. And my biggest worry when I was talking to the engineer was I didn't want some young kid to back up with his Dodge truck, wrap a chain around it, and try to take off and pull the thing off its pedestal. And he's like, they'll bounce their nose up steering wheel if it. They said they'll pull out the rear end of the truck. And of course, those engineers, I don't. They do all the smart stuff as far as numbers and what metal can take what, and so I trust them with that.
Okay.
So
Where does your process start? Sketches, or do you just maybe it even starts early? You talk to the
mhm,
client about what it is they want to do.
yeah.
So can you kind of walk us through your process of you talk to the client and then a certain amount of time later you put something in on their property, that piece
Mhm.
of art. What are the different stages in that process?
I think first it starts with like the interest. They have an interest. They really don't know what they want. So I'll talk to them, try to get an idea of what they're thinking about. But it's funny how my brain works because as they're talking, images are popping in my head, like just popping. Um, that's like that example of when you tell somebody not to think of a pink elephant. Think of a pink elephant.
Yeah.
So, but for me, when someone's talking about, well, I'd like to have this elk, in this area. Do you want a bugle? And yeah, I'd like to see his head up. Do you want big horns or small horns? And my, I just start asking those questions, and automatically, I'm putting something in my head. Um, and typically, what I'll do is I'll say, I'll do some quick sketches, or I might even have my sketchbook there
Okay.
and start whipping out some sketches with them there, and they can walk me through. Well, I like this, I like that, and that way they're participating too, and I'm getting them excited about the piece, and um, maybe I'll ask them questions that if they want something personal in it, like they have any family or tell me about themselves, and try to put some symbolism in it in the piece.
Okay.
But yeah, I'll work out a sketch. Um, and once they approve the sketch, and then of course we have to talk about the financing of it. And that's always been the hard thing for me because, in college they they teach you how to make it, but they don't teach you how to sell it. And so for me, it was easier to make it, but then when I tried to sell it, it's like I hit a big brick wall. Until I had a really good friend of mine. We was going down to an art show and he was talking. And for me, this is what turned the light bulb on. It was he said, I sell my product to whatever. And I'm like, product? What are you talking about, product? And he goes, yeah, it's my product. It's like selling shoes. And I'm like, it's not for me. This is
My
me.
soul.
It's my soul here.
Isn't that?
And and I thought that's what I need to do. I need to separate myself from my work. And and then I just kind of had a flashback. I worked in some galleries in Jackson, and it was super easy for me to sell someone else's piece. But it came to my own, I would trip and stumble and and just it was hard for me. It's like I hit that wall. But as soon as I told myself I have to separate myself from it to sell it, that's when it helped me with
I'm really curious about that part. So it wasn't the fact that you were selling a product that, strictly speaking, someone doesn't need, right? We
Mhm.
don't need art on our walls to survive.
No.
It's about the things we have in our lives so that we live well.
Hmm.
So it wasn't a problem that you were not selling them something that was required for survival. It was the fact that it was yours.
Hmm.
Is it because you knew the flaws that were in it, or was there a bit of an imposter syndrome where you don't think of yourself as this high merit artist very easily, so it's hard to talk about yourself as a high merit artist? Is
That's
that
it.
it?
That's it. Growing up, I was always taught to be humble. And so, and even now, someone will ask me, "Hey, will you do something for me?" Yeah. What will you charge? Nothing. Because to me, it's just, it's always so easy. And I'll say, "Yeah, I'll just do it. Don't worry. And it won't take me very long." And typically, but then I get involved. I'm like, "Gosh, why did I do that?" Me and my big mouth. But yeah, and then when you're talking about, big sculptures, you're talking about thousands of dollars. I mean, you talk about the whole bronzing process. There's a lot of steps to get something from clay to wax to bronze.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it's a process that's been around for. thousands of years.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just, talking about the money, but typically, most people know that they're going to pay something.
Hmm.
And they may ask, why does it cost so much? And so I'll walk them through the process because I grew up in the process and knowing it. So I feel more than confident of talking to them about the whole process, even the details of it. Um, and then I'll whip out some sketches and then bring it to them. They say, yeah, and then I'll start from there. And there's a couple options. You can start by sculpting a maquette, a smaller version of it.
Hmm.
And then you take the maquette to them, and if they like it, then you have the option of taking it to an enlarger. And the enlarger will then have a scanner and scan the piece and then put it in the computer. And then they'll send that data to a CNC milling machine. And then they'll enlarge those pieces and carve it out in foam. And then you'll get the foam. And then it's up to you to put the armature inside the foam
Sorry,
and
the what inside the foam?
the foam, the armature. So
Armature.
foam in itself won't hold itself. So you got to put metal or whatnot in it. Um, Sometimes the enlargers will put the armature inside of it. So when you get it, all you have to do is put clay on it. But there's things that when they when the CNC machine cuts the foam out, there's things that it misses. Like there'll be areas that are what they call in shadow. So as the laser comes and say hits the ear, the laser can't go through your ear, so it just records the ear. It doesn't record what's going on behind the ear. So when the CNC machine cuts it out, of course that's all blocked in.
Yep. So there's like as if there was like solid flesh
Yeah.
between
And
the.
so
Yeah.
I got to go in there and carve it out.
Okay.
Um, but doing that for other artists when I worked at a foundry, that the artists were paying so much money to have all this detail put in on the foam, and then I'd get the foam and I'd put clay over it, and there went the detail.
Mm.
And I'm like, you really? And it's a different piece. So, for example, with the maquette, if I'm off even a quarter of an inch on the maquette, you
Uh-huh.
won't see it. But a quarter inch blown big, I mean,
Right.
you're going to see it.
Sure.
And pretty soon it's like, geez, that thing's off by a foot, 2 foot. And you can see it now, but you can't see it in your maquette.
That is an
So,
ugly tiger. Yeah. That tiger needs a cane. Yeah.
so the last two pieces, um, you can buy foam at a hardware store. There's
Uh-huh.
all sorts of foam. There's spray foam. There's foam board. There's foam that you can buy. It's a two-part that you can put in fence posts with.
Yep.
Um, so, for example, with this eagle, they wanted a 16-foot wingspan. And I'm like, all right. So I went and got two pieces of foam board that were 4x8. You put them together, they're 16 feet. All I had to do is draw out the proportions. So I drew out the proportions of the eagle and then carved out the foam
You're
and
just
then
in there with like a razor knife,
it's just
just
well, I
cutting
bought
away.
this I bought this knife that you can plug in that heats up like red hot and just cut right through the foam.
Oh, that sounds
Um,
like fun.
well, and then I make my own tools. Like one of my favorite tools, believe it or not, is I took a hacksaw blade,
Hmm.
but I sharpened the end up like a knife, and then I put some taping it on the end so it kind of looks like a knife.
Yep.
But you can poke it into something, just cut right through it.
Yep.
It's light, it's simple, it's easy,
Yep.
and it works. And I
Yep.
know if I went to an art store, I'd probably have to pay $80 for the thing. So
So what I'm hearing is you need to patent, yeah, the Dollard knife.
I guess
Yeah.
that thing I use that thing so much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll just carve it out, and in my mind, I'm like, I just gotta get it in the ballpark. The
Uh-huh.
foam's got to get in the ballpark because I want to put clay over it. That's when I can work with the last 10%, or if I can get this foam in the 90th percentile,
Okay.
I'm going to put clay over it and take it to the 100%. So in foam, I just have to make sure my proportions are close, somewhat right, and yeah, just make sure the proportions are right and make
Okay.
sure it has good armature in it.
Okay.
Typically with the armature, I kind of have two rules. One, it has to be an armature that's weight bearing, and then I put has to be supported because just a pipe up in the air with a mass on top, it'll move. So I'll have to run something down to the base to stop it from moving. Um, but
So armature refers to essentially the skeleton of the
the skill
piece to keep it
mhm,
supported
supported,
physically.
and that can
Okay.
be anything. It depends on how what you estimate the weight to be.
Mm.
It can be conduit, metal conduit. It can be uh, I,
Rebar?
rebar,
Yeah.
be wood, PVC pipe sometimes.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you can make it work. I try to think of things I can go down to the hardware store and get
Uh-huh.
versus having to order it up.
Yep.
Um, it keeps it keeps it keeps it simple. I like to try to keep it simple.
Hmm.
Um, and so far it's done really well.
Okay, so then, all right, so you have your maquette,
Mhm.
be that something this tall, 15 inches tall, something you can wrap your hand around, or be it a full size
Mhm.
mock-up of the thing in that foam you were describing. And so then you say you put clay on it. So are you taking like big balls of wet clay and like wrapping it, like
Mm.
spreading it over
No, so
the
the type of clay I use is an oil-based clay. It's not
oh,
like
wait.
a earth-based clay where you have like water.
Okay.
So an oil-based clay it's primarily has three ingredients. It has a clay body, which
Mm-hmm.
we all know that's what you use ceramics. It's that powder
Mm-hmm.
mixed in with the wax and like a petroleum, like an oil. And so what you do is you melt the wax up and then you put in the right uh, measurement of like oil. And it's
Okay.
all proportions. You get that hot and going, then you start adding your clay body and you keep stirring it till it hits a certain consistency.
Uh-huh.
And then you dump it out. And when it sets, then you have your clay body, then you have your oil-based clay.
Okay.
And then the advantage with the oil-based clay is it'll never dry out. Um, you can work on it, step away, and come back in a week later. It's still pliable, and so it gives you that chance to work with it. So the disadvantage is you can't sell that. The whole idea is when you're making these sculptures in oil-based clay that it's going to be in bronze and you're going to be making a mold on this thing. So when you make a mold on your original piece and you pull that mold off, your original piece is going to be destroyed. But you'll have a mold. And with the mold now you can produce it and you can produce addition numbers off of it.
So the you actually carve the piece in this clay,
Hmm.
and then after that um so you am I understanding
Hmm.
correctly? Please correct me. You have a big block of this oil-based clay that's
Hmm.
been cooked to the right consistency,
Hmm.
and then you're there carving it out. So that foam maquette or whatever else is uninvolved in this part of the process. That
Well,
was more the mock-up stage.
no, so when I have the foam up, what I'll do is I'll heat that clay up.
Hmm.
And once it's heated up, it becomes more pliable.
Hmm.
And then I'll smear that over the foam. So
Oh,
the foam allows me to keep the sculpture light.
okay.
Versus if I use solid clay, that thing would be 3,000 pounds.
Yep.
But because the foam is light, I can get the clay over the foam about a quarter of an inch.
Okay. So you're
So,
putting on this sort of like this lather
mhm,
layer over the foam or whatever else, and then you come back and you touch up your finer details
mhm,
on that clay.
yes.
Okay. So the foam essentially acts as the kind of the filler.
Hmm.
The clay is basically the icing on the cake.
Yep.
And then you're getting in there, you carve up the icing just so.
Hmm.
And then from there, okay, so you got the foam, you've got the icing on top of that, you touch it up the way you want, and then that's how you make your mold.
Yeah. From there, so once I'm done with the piece, I'll have the client or whoever come in and they'll say, "Yep, that's it." I'll give them the green light, go. And then I'll buy the molding materials, and the molding materials are pretty much comprised of uh, it can be a silicone rubber, it can be a polyurethane rubber, but basically what you'll do is you'll paint the rubber over the surface of the sculpture,
Paint it. Okay.
and when the rubber sets up, and usually you want a thickness of about a quarter of an inch thick. I mean that's a thick rubber, but I mean it could be depends on the tolerances of the latex rubber. Because when it goes through the process, when they go to pull the wax from it, they're going to be pulling on that rubber, and if it's too thin, you could tear it.
Yep.
Especially if it's a soft rubber like a silicone. But the advantage of the silicones is they last longer, but they don't have a lot of tear strength. The polyurethane has a lot of tear strength, but it doesn't last as long on the shelf. So you got to pick and choose what you want to do. But
Pros and cons.
yeah, so what the rubber does is it when you paint it on, it captures the texture of the piece. Um, and then once
The
you have
little individual stipples of a feather
it
or
could
the
get your
hair.
fingerprint.
Okay.
That's how sensitive this rubber is. I mean, it can get all the way down to yeah, your fingerprint, your thumbprint, or whatever. And then once the rubber sets up, then you want to put a shell over it, which it's kind of like I think of it as like it's kind of reverse like skeleton. So we have our bones that hold our form, and
Yep.
then we have our skin. Kind of the same thing, but the backing, the shell holds the form of the latex. So, for example, if I was molding my hand, I'd paint the latex over it, get all the detail of my hand, and then I'd put a plaster Paris over the rubber. And then once the plaster Paris sets up, I pull the plaster off, separate the rubber. The rubber will fit back into plaster Paris, and then I'll have uh, what's the word I'm thinking? I will have a mold for my hand.
You'll have a
It'll
mold.
be, yeah, it'll be my hand, but without the hand.
Yep. Yep.
And then so from there, then I
The
can,
hand will form
yeah,
is the vacuum
there's
space
a word I can't
inside.
think of the word right now.
Okay. But
Uh,
it's the negative. Yeah,
it's the negative.
it's
That's what I was saying.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, and then from there, once you have that, now you have a mold. Now you can mass produce them. Uh, So,
And you're just injecting liquid bronze
mm-mm,
into that negative space?
nope.
Nope.
So once you have that wax, because a lot of people
You
ask,
gotta really hold us by the hand through this process.
you guys are jumping way.
Yeah.
It's like bronze baby shoes. People think all I do is dip those in bronze, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Bronze is 2,300 degrees, 2,200 degrees. You get that baby shoe, it's gonna go, poof, it's gonna go up in flames. It's like dipping in a lava.
Yeah.
So once you have the mold,
Hmm.
this whole process is called the lost wax method.
Yep.
So with the mold, what you'll do is you paint a hot wax inside the piece. Your first coat is the hottest because the hotter the wax is, the thinner it is. The thinner it is, the more it can get in those
Yep.
texture grooves.
Yep.
So your first coat is a hot coat. Your second coat is cooler. Your third coat is the coldest. And so that and the thickness of your wax is going to be the thickness of your bronze. So when you're dealing with a monument and you're dealing with panels, you don't want that wax to be thick because when it gets in bronze, you're going to be dealing, if you have a half an inch thick panel, and I'll get to what a panel is,
Yep.
but in case you have to move metal, you don't want half an inch of metal to move versus a quarter or an eighth of an inch. So, and as pieces sit in the wax room, as you sit there, the wax room gets warm and waxes will start to move. So you want to control your thickness of your wax. So you paint your three coats on there. Could be four, could even be two, but typically it's three. And then once the wax cools, then you pull the wax out of the mold. You separate the plaster, and then you pull off the latex or the silicone or whatever it is, and then you'll have a wax cast of your piece. Sometimes it'll be a small piece.
And at this point, it's like peeling an orange. Like you're
Yeah.
peeling away that
Hmm.
plaster of Paris and that rubber
Yeah.
that you were talking about. So then you're left with the wax
The wax.
image of the
There's your
final
original.
piece. Okay.
Some pieces you'll do a rotational cast, which small bronzes you typically do. The mold will come in two pieces,
Yep.
and then you'll pour the hot wax in there, rotate it around, and then you'll dump out the wax.
Yep.
Um, it's kind of like a chocolate Easter bunny, you know,
Yep.
how they're hollow on the inside,
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. So you get your wax cast.
Yep.
The next process is you send it to a person there called the wax chaser, and the wax chaser's job is to there'll be a seam line. Typically, there's a seam line on the wax sculpture to take out that seam line, take out any chill lines, air bubbles, anything that isn't as like the original as possible. You know, you
Hmm.
try to make it look as much like the original as possible in wax,
Hmm.
and try not to lose the integrity of the piece. I mean, you don't want to try to rework it because the artist is going to get it and say that's not my piece.
Yep.
So just keep it simple. Just put back in the texture. Sometimes you have to do a wax weld pieces on or not. Um, the next step after that's what they call the wax spruing. And so the wax spruing is the metal gating to the piece. So and here's where I try to stop and go to that next level to explain it because if I don't, I'll lose them down the road. So you'll have the wax piece. Below it, you might put a wax bar. You might have several wax bars. You might have a piece that goes from the wax bar up to the top of the piece. And from the wax bar down, you'll have like a funnel. They call it the cup, but it's just like a wax funnel shaped cup. And you'll wax weld that onto the piece. So the piece will look like it's sitting on a wax cup with a bar coming up
Kind
and
of
then
like the shape of the base of the. of the
Yeah,
mic right there. Okay.
exactly.
And then you have like your little statue or whatever above it. Okay.
And it looks like it kind of has a cage around it.
Yep.
Um, so once that's done, they'll take it into the shell room or what they call the investment room. They'll take that wax, they'll dip it in this, they call it a slurry, which is a kind of a green material, and they'll let it drip off and they'll throw really fine sand on it. And they'll put it on the shelf and let it set. And when it dries, they'll repeat the process. And as the process continues, the sand gets more and more coarse, and you build up this layer on the outside, on the outside as well as the inside of the wax sometimes. Um, so it's
That
all,
sand, as you apply more layers, the details of the piece will become less and
yeah,
less detailed.
yeah. Basically, you're going to have wax encoded with this rock shell. Um, So that'll be all be done. And then they'll take it into another room once it's got the right layers on it with the shell room. They'll take and they'll cut off the bottom of that wax cup and
Yep.
expose, they'll pull off the shell and expose the wax. And then from there, they'll put it
So
in a
now
hot
at this
oven.
point, the wax is now the inside
The inside,
of
yeah.
the, and now the sand is forming the
Mhm.
exoskeleton of the,
So basically, you're making another mold
yeah.
around the wax.
Uh-huh.
And then from there, you put it in a hot oven,
Yep.
and the hot oven will get to 16, 1800 degrees.
Yep.
And when wax gets that hot, it melts out,
Yep.
leaving a cavity on the inside of that shell.
Yep.
Except the difference, or not inside of that mold, but the difference between this mold and latex mold is this mold can now hold hot bronze.
Ah.
So now you got this shell, it's empty because the wax has been melted out.
Yep.
And so now you'll flip it upside down, you'll have that cup exposed. And so now I like to go back to the spruing process. The spruing process, its whole design is to try to get the metal to the sculpture as quick as fast as possible without it freezing. You ever seen those old Greek sculptures where they'll build and they'll have missing fingers and
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
That's because they were pouring the bronze, and as the bronze was going through there, it cooled and it froze
Oh, and
off.
it stopped. It stopped at the hand or whatever, and
Yeah,
it
they call
didn't.
it a short pour.
A
It's just,
short pour.
yeah, it just stopped and it seized off, and they're like, ah. So now what they'll do is they'll heat the shell up. Now it's burnt out of the wax is out of it. They might do a water check and pour water in it, see if it's leaking any water, and they'll patch it up. And they have to heat that shell up because they don't want any water in that shell. Because if there's water in the shell and they pour that hot bronze in there, water and
It's
hot
gonna
bronze,
steam and it's
it's
gonna
gonna,
explode.
yeah. So they have to heat that shell up, and then when the shell's red hot and they pull it out, take their bronze and they'll pour their bronze and it goes down and it feeds it. And
Okay.
then once the bronze cools, they what they call devesting. They'll take a hammer and all these other ancient medieval things and hit it and knock off all the shell. And when they get 90% of that shell off or 100% of it, I mean, there's still some shell on it that
Yep.
later on you have to sandblast off. But they'll knock off all the shell and they'll take it over to a plasma cutter. And the plasma cutter will then cut off all the wax bar or the metal bars. Those sprue bars are now bronze.
Yep.
And then they'll take it to the sandblaster. Sandblaster will then sandblast the bronze.
Basically sanding it down.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
from there, it goes to another process they call metal chasing. So metal chasing is a lot like wax chasing in that they still have to fix all the imperfections of the bronze.
Yep.
So all the it's just got so many different steps it goes through that it changes.
Yep.
And bronze actually, when you start from original sculpture to when it's done, it's actually shrunk by 3%. People don't know that, but I mean, you're not gonna be able to see it. You're not gonna
Yep.
show the sheet 3%, but it's gonna shrink that much.
Yep.
So the metal chasers will come back in, put in all the texture. May have to do some welding, and there they use like a TIG welder. Um, and with the monuments, they might have to put in an armature on the inside. With monuments, it's basically the same process, but they can't cast the monument all in one big piece, so they have to cast in smaller pieces or panels. And so, for example, the tiger, that's all panels that's been welded together, and they'll get two panels, and of course they got to beat and hammer them and use chains and come alongs to get the panels to go together, and then they'll weld them until everything's done. And yeah, and then once it's all done, they'll have to sandblast it again. And when it gets approved, then it goes into another process they call the patina process.
Approved by the artist.
But what could be the artist, it could be the foundry. Typically what I do with my pieces is I'll make a resource file. So when the piece is in clay, I'll take a ton of pictures. I'll take a bunch of measurements and triangulate, say the eagle's wing down to this trunk or the eagle's wing to this claw, and do all these measurements. So when they get in bronze, at least they can do some measurements, and it won't be on, but we can get it in the ballpark.
Yep.
And so once all that's done, the artist will come there for the patina, and the patina is the coloring process. And so a lot of people don't know this, but bronze is actually a porous metal. It's 90% copper. So if you had a bronze bowl and you poured water in it and let it sit there, eventually it'll start dripping out the bottom. If it's sealed, it won't. But if it's just sandblasted there, and I've seen it, only reason I can say
Really?
I've seen this. Yeah, there was a fountain piece this artist had casted, and
Bronze is a sieve.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you had a bronze cup here and
Yeah.
you didn't have it sealed, and you poured water in it, bronze holds moisture, and it'll pull in, and pretty soon you'll see it in the bottom just start
Just oozing.
just kind of dripping.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
Or if you take a bronze, and when we go to do the patina process, we'll take a weed burner and we'll heat it up. And when it hits about 350 degrees, you'll see that water that the bronze is holding come to the surface and evaporate. And when it gets that hot, that's when you want to apply your patina color. And your
Okay.
patina color, probably the most common one is a ferric, which is a red iron, just rusty
Okay.
water. So what happens is when you spray that chemical with water onto the hot bronze, the water hits the piece. Of course, it hits the hot metal. It evaporates, leaving the chemical adhered to the piece.
Uh-huh.
And just through the years, they've come up with they use acrylics now. They use dyes. I mean, I can't even keep up with the different patinas they're doing. They can do ring. They can make a bronze look like marble. Some of the stuff they're doing now is phenomenal.
Yep. It's really cutting edge. Yeah.
Yeah, that's almost another because you're dealing with color. You're dealing with a different art form.
Yep.
So that's one of those areas. It's really, I mean, if you get a good patina person or patineur, um, they're really worth it because I mean that's what sells your piece. You
Yep.
know?
Yeah. Is the tiger stripes.
The tiger stripes.
Right.
Well, with the tiger, I didn't want to leave the stripes up to the patina person. It would never be the same. They wouldn't be able, one patina person wouldn't be able to put it on like the next one. So I actually carved those stripes in. So when they go to put the blackening on it or what they call the potash and then scrub it back. So the potash, which is a liver sulfur, will just turn the whole bronze black, and then they'll scrub it back,
Okay.
and it leaves the black in the recesses. So that was my idea with the tigers when I carved in the stripes. That's
That's
what
how
they
you
like.
that's how you got the striping was
Oh,
realizing that okay, we're gonna have the potash step of the process.
yeah.
I'm gonna recess the stripes, and then when they potash and scrub it back, that's gonna leave some darker areas.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then you have to put a seal over it. It's like a car. I mean, if you just painted a car
Yep.
without putting a seal over it, eventually the elements will start affecting it. So you have to seal it. So
Yep.
traditional method was you use a clear coat like a Johnson's paste wax or a wood paste wax that you put over it, and the wax would cool, and then you buff it back. But now they got seals and they got lacquer seals and stuff that are a lot
More robust.
more robust. Yeah,
Okay.
it just does a better job protecting. And with the wax, if the bronze is sitting outside, the bronze will get hot. The wax will then start melting off, and then it changes the patina. But some of the old collectors like that. It's like, oh, it changes over the years. And for example, the Statue of Liberty, that's pretty much copper,
Yep.
and you get those chemicals from the ocean that turn it that color,
Pea green.
pea
Yeah.
green. Yeah.
Yep.
And so if you got that thing red hot with a weed burner and put some ferric on it, it would turn red.
Huh.
So yeah, but it hasn't been sealed, so that's why you see it turning colors.
Right.
So maybe it has. I don't know. Maybe they do
Huh.
have a seal over it. I don't
Maybe
know.
they sealed in that greenish
That's
color
right.
at
Yeah.
this point. I don't. Yeah.
Never
I don't
know.
know.
So,
Yeah.
but that's why. I mean, I just kind of went through the process. That's why. I mean, it's a lot of man hours to do that.
I was about to say, listening to you, I was thinking, gee, how does anyone afford this?
Yeah.
All right, so hold on. Let's just bring up our tale here. Okay, so if someone has an idea, they come to you. You say, "Great, I can execute your idea. Here's some sketches. Here's my idea." Then essentially, you carve the statue in foam,
Mhm.
either by buying foam blocks and going at it with a Dollard knife,
Hmm.
patent pending.
That's right.
Yep. Or people might use a CNC machine.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So then you basically have the statue in foam, right? And
Hmm.
then you're cooking up this clay, lathering a thinnish layer in clay over the thing.
Right.
And then once that clay sets, then you have to put on that rubber or silicone layer
Well,
after
the
that.
clay will never set. That's the
Okay.
advantage of it. Is I can once the piece is done and the molds pulled off, I can scrape that clay off and reuse it again.
Oh, okay.
So
All
the
right.
clay will never set up
Okay, because it's oil
because
based.
it's oil based.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it doesn't evaporate in any way.
Nope.
Okay. So then that clay allows you basically that the clay in a way is the canvas, as
Hmm.
in that's where you put
Exactly.
in the fine details. Okay. Then you put on that rubber or silicone or rubber silicone
Hmm.
layer. And that's, I'm going to say, the first thing that really captures the captures the work
The texture of it.
permanently.
Yeah.
Okay.
It captures some of the texture,
Uh-huh.
some of the attitude, but rubber in itself won't hold that attitude because it's floppy. It's like a
Mm.
it's like a Halloween mask.
Okay.
So you need something on the outside of that. So that's why you put
The
the
plaster of
plaster.
Paris. Is that right?
You can use plaster nowadays. I mean, sometimes you use foam.
Okay.
They'll use a spray foam over it, which
Okay.
is faster, lighter.
Yep.
There's
So you need
advantages just to that.
something to capture the
Keep it,
rubber.
yeah, keep its form.
Okay. Yep. Then um then you're peeling off that
Hmm.
foam or plaster layer that is attached to the rubber,
Hmm.
right? And filling that with those three layers of hot to warm wax.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've peeled off the plaster with the rubber, then you reassemble it,
Hmm.
fill it with the hot wax.
Hmm.
That hot wax hopefully captures all details of the work, right? We're not missing any
Nope.
fingers or the little curly cues of the leaves or what have you. And then you send that to did you call it the wax chaser?
Wax chaser.
The
Yep.
wax chaser. And then that wax chaser fellow
Hmm.
is basically taking the wax and it sounds to me as if coating it with sand that then becomes cement. Is it
Well, so yeah, the wax chaser will chase it, put in the texture, and then he sends it to the spruing process.
the sprue? Okay.
And then after the spruing, then it goes into investment. So I think the simpler way to explain it is kind of like because I used to give tours at a foundry. So I'd get done and to review, I was like, this whole process is kind of like fossilization. You have a bone, it
Yeah.
goes in the ground.
Yep.
The ground goes around it. Eventually, the minerals will start coming in and taking place of the bone, and so you'll
Yep.
get a cast bone in in rock, I guess, you know.
Yep.
So actually the bone might decay or go away in some cases. I'm
Right.
not all the time, but the bone will decay, leaving a cavity inside the dirt, and then minerals take its place.
Yep.
Kind of the same thing. You have wax, you coat it with something, and then you put it in the hot oven, you heat the oven up, it melts out, and then you replace the cavity with bronze or whatever's melted out, you replace with bronze.
Yep.
Same thing with dentistry. Same thing. They make a mold or impression of your mouth.
Hmm.
They pull the mold out, they put something in it, and they pull it out and they got a cast of it.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
kind of the same thing, just different mediums.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
and really, like I said, the process hasn't changed in thousands of years. What has changed is our technology, and the technology allows you to go to quicker and faster and more reliable. Like I said
Okay.
before, when they would pour the Greek sculptures, they get short pours all the time. You don't see that happening a lot unless you just get somebody that doesn't know what they're doing.
Yep.
Um, and if they do, it's like it's not a total loss. We can redo it again. We can go right back to the mold,
Uh-huh.
and do it over again.
Yep.
You don't like doing that because it costs money, but the piece is not lost. Once you have a mold, piece is not lost. You can there's a thousand ways to skin a cat. Um,
And the
so
mold technically refers to that sand cement shell.
no, the
No,
latex one.
the latex.
The,
Okay.
the the latex, the one that we pulled off, the one that gives us a wax cast of it.
Hmm.
That's what we want to preserve.
Uh-huh.
Because if you lose that, then the only option you have is Hopefully, there's still a bronze sculpture out there.
Yep.
And when the mold goes bad, you can go to that person who owns the bronze sculpture and say, "Can we pull the mold off this bronze sculpture? We'll replace it. Well, it's not going to get damaged because we're at a foundry. If it does get damaged, we'll fix it.
Yep.
But yeah, you pull that bronze off, and bronze is horrible to mold because, like I said, it's porous.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you paint a silicone over it, all that silicone wants to do is get in those little pores and lock on. So you really need a good mold release on that bronze. That, and then also you got to be careful when you put your plaster on, because if you put your plaster on wrong and you try to pull your plaster off, it will lock onto that bronze.
Okay.
You know, with clay and foam, the nice thing about that is when you go to pull that off, the clay and foam will give away. I mean, something's got to give.
Yep.
Bronze, it doesn't have that. And I've had pieces lock onto a bronze, and I'm like, "Ah," so I had to cut the plaster to get it to kind of come apart, and then try to repair it, get it come back together again because it locks up. You know, there's no way to get it off besides cutting it off.
Because I mean, it's almost like Spider-Man, like it's sinking
Yeah.
into the material itself.
Imagine if you had this cup and you put a plaster around it and
Yep.
let it set
Yep.
around these corners,
Yep.
and then you try to pull it off. It's gonna lock. So you're gonna have to cut it, break it, so you can spread it apart, and then
Right. And then hopefully be able to essentially sand out
yeah,
the seam that now you have created.
yeah.
So you have to be intelligent with your application of the plaster,
Mhm.
that if you are coming in on a three-dimensional object,
Mhm.
you don't do it in a way that then can't be
Yeah.
separated out.
It's like the tiger. I went and got the molds. Well, one of the molds I just had the latex. I didn't have the back on it. I didn't have the shell, what they call the shell. So I had to go to the original tiger and put this latex back up there. I had to use fishing string to tie it back on to try to get it to sit up against the bronze as much as possible. And then I bought foam, one of those kits you buy to put in like uh, a foam, like a fence. Um, and I just mixed in small quantities and put it on a flat piece of trash bag, and then put it up there against there. And as it expanded, I held it, and then I do small layers at a time. The disadvantage of this is the piece I was missing was right on the tiger's butt. So I had a ladder, and I'm up there trying to hold this, and the high school kids are coming out, and of course,
Yeah, they're just CG, just grabbing some ass.
yeah. Hey, what are you doing there behind that tiger? I knew it was going to come, and I just
Oh my
like
gosh, that's a hell of an image.
I was
Yeah.
trying to hurry it up, but gosh, I heard the bell ring, and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
prepare yourself because they're high school kids, and they're gonna have a good old time.
They're right. They are going to enjoy this. Yes.
And then somebody in the community saw it, and they took a picture, and they posted on Facebook, "Dollard, what are you doing? This doesn't look right." And I'm like, man, should have went and did it at night. Yeah. But
That is hilarious.
I was able to get the mold off, and it was successful. It worked.
Yep.
Um, and that's all. I just needed to get that one cast off of it. So
Yep.
it worked.
It
And
worked eventually.
yeah, now I got a fun story to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The time I went to Lander High School and
Grab the
grabbed
tiger's
some.
butt.
Yeah.
So I was on a tall ladder. I'm
Yeah.
probably 10 feet in the air too.
Uh-huh.
So,
Grab that feline butt,
that's
just
right.
I just need my mold. Gee, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, as the kids of Lander. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. What graduating class was that saw you? Was that
That had to be, wasn't last year, year before. So
hmm,
I'd say 2 years ago.
okay?
And I almost stopped because the buses were pulling up, and
A lot of kids.
one kid was just thought he was super. I can't remember what he said, but I'm like, kid, I'm gonna spank you.
Right.
I'm gonna call your folks.
Yeah.
But he was having a good time with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, glad I'm making a memory for
You're right. He'll be telling that story till the day he
him.
dies. Yeah.
One time I saw the artist up there touching the tiger's butt.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh, should we take a quick break?
Sure.
All right. What time is it? Okay.
Hmm. Well, I remember listening to this lady talking about, or this guy talking about writers and writing, and he said, some of your best writers in history were not great writers at first; they were the best rewriters. meaning
Mm.
100% of the stuff they wrote, they kept 10% of it, and the
Yeah.
rest of it was gone. And I'm like, the same things with drawing. I mean, you're starting out with a rough draft. And
Okay.
all those scribbles, you're gonna keep a little bit of it, but those scribbles, you need them. You need to see where you're at.
The scribbles are sort of the way where you explore.
Yeah, searching, you're exploring.
You're exploring your own mind and
Hmm.
your understanding of the image,
Exactly.
but it's done outside of you on this
Hmm.
piece of paper.
And that helps me out when I'm doing sculptures. It helps me out working out composition,
Hmm.
working about, you got these different shapes. How am I gonna make them come together? Talk about the elements and principles of design, and the whole idea between that is to try to create a good solid piece. And one of those, I don't know if it's an element or principle, I can't remember, but it's called unity. And so you want all these things to be unified. You want them to be one,
Uh-huh.
you know. So when I'm working on pieces, that's what I try to do is not have something that's just like a cowboy sitting on a horse. I mean, what can I do to make the two come together so they're, yeah, I know that they're separate, but how can I get them to make them look like they're one, like they're in the same space and time, I guess, or I don't know. I can see it in my head. It's
Right.
hard to explain, but
Yeah, sure, sure. But what,
Yeah.
right, how do you articulate it?
yeah.
But you have a sense of that these things in real life are living and breathing
Hmm.
in some sort of harmony.
Yeah.
You have to capture that
Mhm.
in a stiff material.
Yeah. And you see it. You see people that don't have an idea. They just think, well, I'm just going to sculpt in a horse and a rider. And that's what you get, but they just don't. And then you see someone that's been really well trained and not well trained, but just studied in that, and you see that big difference. And this is just more aesthetically pleasing than
And
the
it's just
other one.
hard to say why,
Yeah.
but it's hard to say why, but it's not hard to say which one is
Hmm.
more pleasing to the
It's
eye.
like music. You have someone that really can play a good instrument, and you have one that just beats on it. And you're like, I guess that's kind of music. I don't really like it, but you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times when you see something like they didn't get it
No.
this time, but then you see someone who does, and you're like, whoa. And it just keeps drawing you, and you kind
Hmm.
of keep looking at it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm always looking. I've done a lot of different things, and I try to apply all those things that I've done into my artwork somehow.
Hmm.
It's just like I had to do. I was an art teacher, but I always got a chance to see all these different students' works. I was a smoke jumper, and I got to see, got to be out middle of nowhere and see all that, and so I try to just incorporate all that. And then you meet people, and they say certain things. You're like, oh, that's good. I'm gonna follow that. So it's a lot of things that build up to this one piece.
Sure.
It's not just, sculpting it,
No wonder it's hard to sell.
Yeah,
I,
it is.
the reason this piece is special is because
Well, this one in
I saw an eagle
particular.
flying during a wildfire. Yeah. Sorry, but go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead.
this one in particular, because just where I was at in my life, and I lost a really good friend that was he was like my brother, and he was in law enforcement. Anyways, he passed away last year, and he always said, Deke, you're a good cop, but you're 100 times better the artist. And he was like, I don't know why you're even doing this. I'm like, well, I had to do it because I didn't, nothing else was coming around, and teaching wasn't paying enough, so I jumped into law enforcement.
Uh-huh.
Um, but he passed away, and then the fire, and so the fire it was stressful. But
This is out on the fire out on your property.
mhm,
Hmm.
it burned down the first eagle I was working on. I had a bunch of other pieces I was working on, and all of them were just melted, gone, because it was oil-based clay.
Yep.
Um,
So the clay, because of the oil, it actually burns.
well, it got hot
Yeah.
first because it has wax in it, so it just melted.
Uh,
Um, got on the ground, and just if it gets a certain temperature, it'll ignite, go on fire, like 300, I think 300 degrees. Um, but yeah, it just melted. And the foam, of course, I didn't take much for that to go.
no.
So all I had was metal armature sticking up in the air. That's
Oh,
it. So
Yeah,
my art
these
tools survived.
skeletal vestiges.
So, but the strange thing is a lot of people were like, "Oh, the artwork." I'm like, that doesn't bug me. I did it once. I can do it again.
Okay.
I can do it fast the second time because I know what I did wrong the first time.
Right.
So in my mind, I'm like, I don't care about that, but the building, I don't have any experience building buildings.
Mm.
And I know that that costs a lot of money. And I'm like, what am I going to do? The insurance company was telling me all this stuff. I had a buddy of mine that sells insurance. He's like, yep, delay, deny, and defend. That's what they're going to do. And that's exactly what they did. And so I just treated it like a crime case, and I went out and got a bunch of statements, gathered factual stuff, and submitted it. And the adjuster's like, yeah, we got to cover this now.
Mm.
Because I was talking to one attorney, and it's like, I work cases that are where we have to show probable cause, which is more than 80%. We have to show that the evidence and everything else is like almost overwhelming that this person probably did it. The probable cause, they probably did it. Well, civil stuff, insurance, you just have to show preponderance of evidence, which is like 60.
Okay.
It's less than probable cause. So, um, it's like I got this, man.
Uh-huh.
In my mind, that's all I'm thinking about.
That's why is that that's why O.J. Simpson got basically punished, if you will, in civil court,
Hmm.
even though he got off in
Criminally.
criminal court,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is wild.
It's,
Yeah.
oh, that, and it's probably an attorney going to listen to this and go, oh, no, no, he's got it all wrong. Maybe I do. I don't know. I'm good at gathering facts, and
Sure.
and so that's where my mind starts going.
Yep.
It's gathering those facts.
Yep.
And so, yeah, um, interesting process though.
Uh-huh.
But in that you hear certain things. Sailors are not made in calm storms, which is true.
Mm.
And I just looked at it and just said, I'm gonna get through this, and I'll be better because of it. And I look back now, and I'm like, there was a purpose for it. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to go through some stuff, but um, I believe everything's for a reason. So,
Right. How old were you when you started coming to realize that you had this artistic drive?
oh my gosh, 5.
5?
I remember my mom. My mom would go to the post office to drop off bills, and if I saw any kind of space that was white, I'd grab a ballpoint pen and I was drawing monsters and Godzillas and everything. Well, she'd get these bills and have to pay these bills, and she would put a stamp on it. Here's all my drawings all over.
Oh.
At the post office, I remember her going, "You got to stop this," and I never could. Going through school, I was always doodling, always my papers. There was never a spot on my papers where there wasn't a doodle, and teachers would get after me. I'm like, I can't. It was like an addiction all the way through college. It was funny though. It's like I developed. So in college, I'd be taking a note, and then I'd do a doodle, a drawing over here, and then I'd take a little note and do a drawing. And then when I went home and I could look at that drawing in my little note, and I remember what the professor was saying. Weird.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
It's just like that drawing really, and it had maybe a dragon, but I can remember. It's like I went right back there, and I could tell you what the professor was wearing, what they were talking about, who was sitting next to me, who coughed. It was just weird. You know? It was weird, but yeah, all my college notebooks had drawings in it. And
Wow.
sometimes kids would sit there and watch me draw. They're like, "What are you doing?" I don't know. I can't stop. I can't. It's like my
Okay.
mind's one way, and
Right. So you got into that flow state, I'm guessing, where you lost track of time.
yeah. I
That's
took
nice, isn't it? I love that.
I took a when I worked for the BIA as a cop, because I had a teaching background. They sent me to school resource officer training,
Mhm.
and the very first one, which was I think the organization is called NASRO, National School Resource Officer Organization. Anyways, um, the guy that taught it had a really good section in there about kids with disabilities. Because when I was younger, they thought I had a attention deficit, like I wasn't paying attention. And I mean, I was always off. My mind was always off someplace else. And this guy was talking about learning disabilities, and he was had all these teachers in the room, and he was giving them tasks to do. And these teachers were freezing up and doing this. And he's like, what you guys experience, these kids with disabilities, they they deal with that every day. But as he's talking about it, he goes, well, some people get uh what is it called? Attention deficit.
Attention deficit disorder.
Yeah, they get that confused with what's it called? Distraction. Not a distraction, but it's like it's
A
a case. Yeah,
stimulation.
it's like a case. So, for example, if someone was to ask you, um, what animal doesn't like a dog, they'll think a cat. You know, first thing that pops in mind, and a cat is done. But for me, it's not that simple. Like, it's not, it's a cat that's on a trash can. It's in an alley with a fish skeleton next to him, and the alley's got all these different colors. It's a beat up alleyway, and there's a bum sitting there, and I start creating this world in my head, and it's not
Oh.
just a simple answer. It's something that's more complex.
Right.
And so I'd freeze. I'm like, oh, what kind of cat? You know, what kind of cat?
Why doesn't it like the dog?
I know.
Yeah.
I start going through all these different scenarios in my head, and teachers would ask me questions. I'm like, oh, you know, not that I didn't know. I knew the answer, but
Right.
it was just always
It was this unspooling of the imagery that just,
the same problem when I write a citation,
uh-huh.
because you're supposed to just write, you know, probable cause statement, which is just the date, time, the basic elements, what you cited for, you're done. That is so hard for me. It's like I get done and I just feel like it's incomplete. I'm like, well, what about what he said? What about what he was wearing? What about what this other person said? What about the time and day? You know, it's I think about all these other things that in my mind that are important, but
Hmm.
for this case they're not. But versus when I worked for the BIA, we'd arrest people and I'd write a whole for me it was a story.
Yep.
You know, the spooky alleyway or whatever. I would write the whole story, and prosecutors like to read that because it put them there. Um, so that's where my mind works.
Okay. So you've got that natural novelist's
Mhm.
instinct
Yeah,
where I want to set the scene.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just a he was out one night.
Yep.
No, what kind of night was it?
Yep. Yep. Was it the full moon?
That's right.
Right.
Was it cold? Was there dogs barking? What was it going on in his mind?
Right. Why was he outside?
Yeah,
Was it
was it
because he just had a fight or he
exactly.
just, yeah,
Yeah,
needed to take a walk, clear his mind,
yeah,
and then he ran across so and so? Gotcha.
yeah.
Man, I like that.
That's really cool. I mean, it's like what they say, you know, like you can tell the mastery in the detail.
Mhm.
So that makes so much sense, like why art is like the perfect thing, because you can just get more and more detail in whatever you're doing and kind of like express like all of your
Mhm.
thoughts, everything that goes in there. And
Yeah.
yeah,
When I'm working on a piece, the hardest thing, I mean, I can work out the composition, I can work out the proportions, get everything right, and then we get down to the details, the texture. And I want to be original with my texture. And with this clay, you can do a lot of different stuff with this clay. You can use a heat gun, you can make a brush texture, you can make, and so I'm like, what is this piece saying? What does it need? It's like a brush stroke. What direction I want to go? And that's where I'm like, ah, and it takes me forever.
Sure.
But eventually I got to make the decision saying it's done. I got to move on, you know, and be done with it. And so I'm working it out now. I'm working out you know, like with the feathers, for example. I've
Hmm.
seen so many sculptors with an eagle sculpt all the little feathers in there. Is it you want to? Yeah, that's the detail. But if you ever take your hand and run it over an eagle's wing, you're not going to feel all those feathers. You can see them because they got different colors to them, so you can see the outline of them. But sculpturally, if you were to spray paint that bird's wing all white, it would just look like a solid form. So I have to
oh,
tell myself that I can't let those details fill it in. I had a really good drawing professor say one time, he said, he taught me two things. He said, draw what you see, not what you know, and see light as shape. And the draw what you see, not what you know, I would see that with art students all the time. An example of that it would be is like they're drawing an elk and the whole neck is in shadow. So it's just black. But the kid will start drawing it. And he'll start with the head or the eye and get all this great detail, and he'll get down to the neck and he'll start putting all the little hairs because he's so into the art to the drawing, he's not looking at his resource.
Mm,
And I'll walk there, I'll walk and he goes, Mr. Dollard, I'm having a hard time seeing what this, and I'm looking at it, I was like, okay, why are you putting all those hairs in there?
right.
Well, because an elk has hair. And I'll say,
Right.
well, look at your resource. Do you see all those hairs? No, because they're in shadow. You're making this thing harder than what it is. You're putting details in there that you're not seeing. So draw what you see, not what we
You're
know.
bringing things to the table. Yeah.
Well, the same thing with eagles is like we know all those feathers are there, and they want to put them in there,
Uh-huh.
but you wouldn't, if you'd put your hand over it, you wouldn't feel it. So
If you closed your eyes and ran your hand over a real eagle's wing, it would have this sort of continuous,
smooth.
yeah, this continuous
If you ran
texture.
it backwards, you'd feel
Yeah,
it, but
sure.
um, yeah. So that's what with I try to relate that with sculpture. I mean, what am I actually seeing? What kind of surface is that? So I'm trying to accomplish that. I'm trying to keep it smooth, pulling in what the Impressionists did. So the Impressionist painters, they would do these Impressionist paintings. They wouldn't paint all the detail, but it's crazy because your mind fills in all those details.
Right.
That's what we naturally do. We look at the sky and we see the clouds. We automatically want to see a turtle, but that's not what a turtle is. These Impressionist paintings, you get up to like a Monet Manet and you see a brush stroke and you're like 3 inches from it. It's a big, broad brush stroke, and you're like, I could do that. Well, then you step away 10 feet, and that brush stroke turns into a leaf or a lily
Mm.
on a lily pond, on a
Yep.
pond or
Yep.
something. So it's amazing if you know.
And it is amazing how, so I mean, so Monet was doing those lily ponds when he
Mhm,
was 80. I mean, his eyesight was failing.
mhm,
One reason he went so big with them. But yes, he understood
he
that it
understood.
wasn't the individual brushstroke
Mhm,
that mattered, just the way the letter in the word does not define the whole sentence,
mhm.
which then helps make up the story.
Yeah, yeah. He
Yeah.
he understood what happens in a two-dimensional plane, and he was really concentrating on colors. And yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of things that came to play, composition and
Mm.
all that. But I mean, once you do it a lot, you just kind of just know. It's like
Hmm.
musicians that play a lot of music, they know what's good and what isn't. It's like that's no good.
Yep.
But there's some it's like, hey, I like the sounds of that or whatever. The same thing with art. You just know what feels right and what isn't, what's
Uh-huh.
working and what isn't. Um, and for me, I've just been around it for so long that I just know what works for me. You know.
Sure. When did you start formal training, or formal lessons?
Probably when I was in kindergarten. When I grew up, we had art teachers.
Okay.
So my first art teacher was Miss Amadio. She's somewhere still around here. Um, and then after her was another lady by the name of Miss Halsey. And then after there was Miss Howell, Millie Howell, and then Delbert Hessling. And then in high school was Bill Yankee and Spriggs, Mr. Spriggs. I can't remember his first name, but it was mostly Bill Yankee is who I had. And they saw it in me and just kept pushing me and gave me what I needed. Um,
Did you ever feel as if you were a failure at art? Or did you ever have this moment or episode of self-doubt?
uh, kind of. I mean, I was selling my pieces in high school.
Okay.
That was a big confidence booster. Um, no, I mean, art was always something. I mean, I struggled in other areas of in school. Like I was a horrible speller, still am. Math, math was always tough for me. Um, research writing papers, I was horrible at, but creative writing, I was good.
Mm.
And so it's like anything where they put you in a box, I struggled with. Anything they gave me freedom with, I excelled with. And so, yeah. But I guess if there was any failing, it was that part, you know. Um, but
It's interesting.
the art, I was able to just kind of get away, just develop myself, and it was mine. This was
Okay.
mine. Um, I was always doing it. I mean, I remember going and grabbing chunks of sandstone when I play hooky from school, and I went. My dad was a horseshoer, and he had these horse rasps, and I'd go grab one of his horse rasps and be rasping on the sandstone and sculpting things and
Mm. So you
sandstone.
started
That's
doodling
cool.
in 3D.
Oh yeah, yeah. At a young
Wow.
age, I'd take clay from the side of the riverbank and just mess around with it, and always. I mean, I was just always doing it. So I don't know. I mean, I was just my mom was an artist, so I got to see her do some stuff, and
Okay.
she did a lot of drawing. So did my dad, but they worked their jobs, and that was something they kind of did, and you know, in
Whereas
Pathfinder.
for you, you almost can't get away from it.
No, no. Even now, if I go to training someplace, I go right back to doodling.
Uh-huh.
I can't stop. It's
Uh-huh.
like don't. I remember having a teacher walk by. and grab my piece of paper. I kept walking and ripped it up, and I was like, "Huh, grab another one.
Grab another one. Okay. So it was like breathing. Like,
So,
yeah, can
it's easy,
make me skip a breath, but this
Mhm.
is just what I do.
Yeah, it's just
Interesting.
yeah. Look, I think so. My mind was always going.
Hmm.
Always going.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
Wow. I grew up, I'd go up to my room, I'd play Legos, and I mean, I would just be building things in Legos for, I mean, I remember 7 hours at a time one time, just putting
Wow.
stuff together. Yeah, just didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't nothing. Right, 7 hours. And it wasn't like, oh man, like I'm gonna try to like keep going, see how long. It's like, it was just the time was just
That's
completely
crazy.
spoken
Yeah.
for.
The time just goes.
The time just goes. Exactly. Um, and to this day, I mean, I just love putting stuff together, just sort of creating that physical space. And I remember one time, I suppose I was in college or right after, we were playing, what's that game with the letters? The bananagrams,
Oh,
right? So they got those little tiles. Um, so we were just playing bananagrams, but between games, I just grabbed the tiles and I just started making a house, right? Um, and like I grabbed a little piece from Risk, like one of the little knights, right? I just put it in the center of the little atrium, like, okay, that's going to be a statue. And then there was this blue piece of paper like sitting on the table. So I just grabbed the blue piece of paper, ripped off a piece, put it, and then put the tiles around it so it looked like a pool, right? I was building this Roman atrium,
mm,
right? And I remember my brother sitting next to me, and he looks over what I'm doing because and it wasn't even like I was thinking about it all that much. I was just like, oh, these tiles are sort of this limestone color. They kind of remind me of a Roman atrium. And so let's make a Roman atrium. And I'm just putting it together. And he looks over, he's like, how do you think like this?
yeah.
Right? How do you put this together like, how do you look at a bunch of game pieces that have letters on one side and think, oh no, those could be building blocks of an architectural structure?
Yeah.
It's, I think,
Yeah.
similar to what you're saying is like,
Same thing.
it's not even something I'm thinking about so much as the thoughts are just rushing in. So, and
Yeah.
it's a cool feeling because you feel truly detached from all your worries and anxieties and antipathies and all these things.
Get in your little world. I have a buddy of mine that says, "You go into Deak Land." We was out hunting one time, and we had these elk, but we tried to put the sneak on them, and we got up over this hill. And these elk had moved across the canyon, and he sits down. He's like, gives up. He goes, I'm just gonna sit here. And I'm like, well, I'll get behind this tree and just start calling.
Uh-huh.
So you never know.
Yep.
So I start calling, and he's like, well, Deeks and Deeks land. And it's funny because in my mind, I'm like, I'll make this cow call. I'll make this one like a fighting call. I'll make this one. And I was in my mind, I'm having this whole drama thing between these cow elk fighting and blah, blah. And I'm sitting there.
The soap opera.
I was.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I heard a bang. And I'm like, what's he shooting at?
Right.
I come around the corner, I come around the tree, and I see him stand up and shoot again. And I'm like, I should have known. It was a stupid question. I was like, what are you shooting at? And he goes, that elk. And I said, what elk? And he pointed down the hill, and I saw this leg coming up, and I'm like, where did it come from? He said, it come running out of the trees, like at a full gallop.
Uh-huh.
And I'm looking at these calls going, so it worked? And
Right.
he's like, yeah, it worked.
He wanted to know how the season of this particular novella, yeah,
Yeah.
this particular drama.
He said that thing come running in. It was slobber was coming out of its mouth, and I'm like, so my drama worked or
Mm,
something. He goes, yeah, you're in Deacaland. You're in your own little world. I'm like,
that's great. That's great.
yeah, that was a
Yep.
fun story.
Right.
Yeah, you get in your world and you lose track of time. And
Yeah,
good place to be though. I really
it is.
It is a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it's some approximation of what we hope heaven is, right? Where it's
mhm.
just like, oh, I'm just here.
Yeah,
I'm just in the moment, and I'm
exactly.
not worried about what happened before or what's going to come next. It's
Yeah.
just right now in this
Yeah.
sort of timeless present.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there's sometimes I'll be working and of course, I lost track of time, and I'm just sculpting. I'm not even thinking. I'm just working.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I'll blink and I'm like, hey, what am I doing? I'll step away and I'm like, whatever I'm doing is working.
Mm.
I'm not even thinking about it. It's just my hands are just going.
Yep.
And I had a moment like that last night when I was working on the eagle and working on the feathers. And it just, I stepped away. I was like, wow, that's looking really good. I did that. Wow. I wasn't even thinking. I just did it.
Yep.
Um, so it's coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Now I feel like I got a direction.
Mm-hmm.
Before I feel like I'm tripping and stumbling and stuff, but once I got a direction, I'm gonna go.
Right.
And so
Why bronze instead of oil painting or charcoal or anything else? I mean, was it just one day you had to do stuff in 3D?
so I think it's just where things were. When I was in high school, I had a buddy of mine that was in science class. He had worked at a bronze foundry, and he started telling me about it. And there was a bronze foundry just south of town here, Eagle Bronze, and it just sounded really interesting. I mean, it was artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put in my application. I was hired that summer, and that first summer I did some wax chasing and but mostly spruing. But I mean, I was around fine artwork, and it's just one of those things I took to like a duck to water.
Right.
Just it sunk in. Um, I was always drawing and painting though. I mean, I've just always done that. And um, as you go through college, I would see artists that work sculpturally, but then I'd see them do drawings and paintings. And it was something I noticed with all of them. And Michelangelo's a good example. You look at his pieces, it looks like he's drawing his sculpture, or he's painting his sculptures, or he's sculpting his drawings. Whatever's going on there, you see a similarity. And the basic one is drawing. And so I'm a firm believer that, an artist is only as good as his drawing. So the more he draws, the better his pieces will be, whether he decides to go the painting route or the sculpting route. Drawing is kind of that
Mm.
basic area. Um, and when I'm drawing, my drawings look like my sculptures. It looks like I can not even be drawing my sculpture. I'll just draw it and then go over to the building where my sculpture's at, and it'll look like I'm drawing my sculpture. And I think there's something in your brain where you develop I don't know what it is, where you develop this ideal where when you go to sculpt it, it just that's the way you see it, you know?
Mm.
So you have this, call it this personal lens through
Mhm.
which you see the world.
Exactly. Um, Michelangelo did it. Raphael, what's the painter that painted the ballerinas? Degas.
Oh yeah, yes. I can you see my collection
Oh
of
yeah.
books on Impressionism down
Mhm.
there? Yeah, Degas features very largely. I was in Argentina, golly, December, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay, I was in Argentina. I couldn't believe how many Degas they had
Yeah.
down in Buenos Aires. I mean, we were walking through the museum. I was like, dang. So this is where they all went.
Yeah.
They had a great collection
There's a
down
book
there.
down there I saw Sargent, and
Yeah.
I saw his works in when I took art history. I was like, eh.
Hmm.
But when I went over to Europe, I saw him everywhere. I'm like, this guy was busy. He
Oh
did
yeah.
some big painting, and they were
Yep.
good paintings.
Yep.
I had a professor of mine. He really liked Caravaggio,
Mm-hmm.
and when I went over there, I saw why. I loved his work. I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was definitely where he was. You know how he influenced.
Caravaggio is famous for like the Call of Matthew and like the conversion of Saint
Well,
Paul, right?
yeah, he did a lot. He changed things, and he started doing what they call the night painting.
Mm-hmm.
So he had this black background with a candle,
Yep.
and before that, artist wasn't really doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and he started doing that. Just it was a different look, a different take to it.
Okay. Is that what people are usually referring to when they use the term like chiaroscuro, or is that not quite the same
I
thing?
can't remember.
Okay.
I remember the word,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't remember what that word was about.
Okay.
Possibly, you might be
Okay.
right.
Yep.
But yeah, he had a different look to it, and then
Mm-hmm.
a lot of artists like that. I mean, I imagine because it was selling, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what I mean. People say, "Well, he's influential." Yeah, he was influential. He was selling a lot, and when you're selling a lot, then other artists, patrons come and say, "Could you paint a painting like this guy?"
Mm.
Yeah, I suppose I could. And so, I mean, it all comes down to the money.
Art
I
needs
mean,
patrons.
exactly. You see, the bucking horse. Um, a popular subject matter. The bugle and elk.
Hmm.
There's some subject matters out there that will sell, and you sculpt them, they'll sell. So I always try to remember that
Hmm.
when I'm doing a piece. I try to put my own twist on it,
Sure.
make it a little. I want to be original.
Yep.
I don't want to copy someone else's idea. People say that, but you look at artists all through the history. They've always borrowed from each other. There's not really one original guy. There's a different take on it, but
Sure, but I mean, but hold on, let me push back on that a little bit. I mean,
Mhm.
isn't that what makes Edouard Manet and then like his impressionist followers somewhat remarkable because
Mhm.
yes, it's not that they invented painting,
Mm-mm.
but I mean, they were doing something that flew in the face of what was considered the way art was done by the French Academy at the time,
Well, and I
right?
think they were competing with the photographer because now you had the photographers coming out and they're like, "Crap, what are we gonna do now? Well, we
Mm,
can do more color, and we can paint this impression of the moment. We
mm.
can be kind of like the camera, but we can see something else." And
Oh,
so
interesting.
they pushed the envelope, and it really did. The camera couldn't keep up with them. And
But it wasn't like, oh, the camera's so detailed and so exact. We're gonna try to be exact and detailed like the camera. They just went in the opposite
they did,
direction, and we're gonna try to give you the feel of
yeah,
something.
yeah. It'd be interesting. I wish I could go back in time and say, what was the talk to these artists? What was the moment where you said, "I'm going to do this"? What was it? Was it you and another artist talking? You guys
Right.
did you guys have one too many drinks? Because there's always that interesting story behind it.
Yeah.
Caravaggio, he had an interesting life. We all know
Oh,
that story.
geez, yeah.
Um,
He went on the run because he was accused of murder, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that sometimes it's those stories that make the artist more interesting.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I like that. I mean, we're all, none of us are innocent. We have all kinds of crazy stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, I always tell the people that I arrest, I was like, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes I'm like, the only difference between you and me is I didn't get caught.
Right.
You got caught and you played the game and you failed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
Right.
was my younger years, but man, I did a lot of
Right.
crazy
Next
stuff.
time, learn to jump a fence,
That's right.
know.
Well, a lot of it had to do with alcohol, and
Mm.
every time I arrested him, alcohol was involved. And so this one guy was talking to, I'm like, "Have you ever been to jail sober?" And he's like, "No." So I'm like, "Well, is it safe to say if you stop drinking, you'll stop going to jail?" I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. Call me crazy. And he's
Yep.
like, "I never thought about that." I was like, "Well, see, if you stop drinking, you stop drinking for a month, your life will change. I'll put money on it.
Yeah.
You stop drinking just for a month, your life will change." And some of them would take me up on it. Some of them went. One guy said, "Yeah, it was crazy. It was like I woke up and the sun was up. It was just like a he had a revelation or something.
Mm.
Wow.
So I think sometimes you just gotta make things simple like that and stop drinking. Your life will change. You know,
Right. Right. Stop. Yeah, what's that?
or you'll stop going to jail. I
You're
should say.
right. Right. It's it's not a story, call it a parable. But how did the young man end up, you know, at the brothel making a terrible mistake? It's like, well, his mistake wasn't going through the door of the brothel. The mistake was turning down the street
Exactly.
that he knew the brothel was on.
Mhm.
It's similar things. Like, look, you really want to change the context of your life and your decisions. Just get alcohol
Yeah.
offline, right? That's
Mhm.
going to change. That is the street you turn down, right? When you say, well, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling depressed, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's have a drink.
I always tell people, it's like, whether I was in law enforcement, smoke jumping, fighting fire, or whatever, listen to your stomach, man. Listen to that inner, I don't know what it is, but if it
Mm,
says no, trust it. Because that has gotten me out of so many bad situations that if I would have done what people said or even what my training said, even though I shouldn't have done it, I mean, I could not be here talking to you today.
uh-huh.
So yeah, listen to that voice, man. If it says no, don't do it.
Sorry, did you I want to clarify. Are you saying there were times when your training said go route A, but your stomach said go route B,
Hmm.
and you went route B,
It went route B.
and you sort of went flew in the face of the training?
Yeah.
Do you have a specific example
So
in mind?
there was a time we jumped a fire. Um,
And sorry, just to make sorry, not to slow you down.
mm,
Jumping a fire means you fly in by helicopter and you rappel out of a helicopter.
no.
Okay.
So you're at a smoke jumper base, you get a fire call,
Hmm.
you put a parachute on with the jumpsuit, you jump in the plane, you fly to wherever the GPS coordinates are, they'll fly around and you find a jump spot and you jump out. And
Okay.
you land in that area, you take off your jumpsuit, grab your PG gear or your personal gear bag and your Pulaski, and you go put the fire out.
Okay.
So it's wildland fire. The only difference is the way we get there. And we have to pack all our shit out. We got to pack all our smoke jumping gear, our PG, I mean all that, our parachute, all the chainsaws, we have to pack it all out. So that's why you have to be in really good shape because you got to hump that stuff out. And sometimes it can weigh, I think my heaviest pack was like 150 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
Miserable. And the only thing that saved me is because I was going down a steep hill. I was basically digging a trench with my feet as I was going.
Mm.
If I wanted to rest, all I had to do is lean back.
Yep.
I'd be against the mountain, and that was easy to get up. But
Right. You're
at the
basically sledding on your pack.
Wow.
but there was one fire I went to, and what was it? The fire was downhill, and is that a good example? The fire was downhill. I was just like, no, but we had an air command up in the air saying there's nothing wrong with that. And we said no, we wasn't going to go down the hill. And we had a lookout looking out for us. And based on the conditions and the relative humidity and all that, we said no. We had fought that fire all night and we kept getting spot fires everywhere. And we just said no, we're not going down there. And the commander was like, you guys get down there. And we was like, nope. And we stayed up on the hill and that fire eventually it blew up. If we'd have been down there, who knows?
Hmm.
You know? But yeah, in my stomach, I was like, no, I can't really see where I'm going. It's steep, and if it does go bad,
You can't climb back out.
no, you
That
can't outrun a fire like that. No
especially
way.
uphill,
Uphill. Because as a fire's down here, it's preheating everything above it, and it's
drawing things out.
yeah. Then you got the topography, and that heat's coming up, and it's drying everything, and just whoa, it'll just come right up. I mean, elk and deer get caught in it, and you know,
And they can run faster than we can.
oh yeah, and it takes the oxygen out of the air when it gets that hot. I mean, it does all sorts of nasty stuff. It creates its own weather. So yeah, I just don't go. I mean, really, it's just a big lawn that needs to be mowed. I just one smoke jumper say, old smoke jumper say, it's just a big lawn that needs to be mowed anyways. So it's not worth it, you know. Do what you got to do. I mean, and sometimes we'd jump a fire and we would put a line around it, and then what they call lateral fuels, which is the like the branches that come out. They're like a ladder, so that's what'll bring it up into the canopy.
Hmm.
So we knock down the lateral fuels, and we would take all that stuff and we build what they call a bone pile, which is basically a big bonfire.
Hmm.
And we'd have big bonfire, and we'd watch the fire that night and have great discussions, kind of like we're doing now.
Hmm.
But that'd be interesting doing a podcast on a fire.
Oh, that'd be
Some
sick.
of the conversations that we had. I mean, the
Mm.
majority of the smoke jumpers, a lot of them had college degrees. Some of them were doctorates, and they like jumping fires.
They just hadn't found something else that was more compelling than.
Yeah. So it kept the conversations interesting. But so we'd bone pile, burn all that stuff, and that the idea was we burn up all the fuel, get a good hot fire going, so it burns it down to ash, and the next morning there's nothing burned. It just cools down, and we would do what they call cold trailing. So we take off our leather gloves and go through the ashes and make sure there's no hot spots, and we go through the whole fire and make sure there's no hot spots, and then um, once there's no hot spots, then we call it out and we hike out of the fire. Sometimes we
With
hike.
all that
Yeah.
with all that gear.
A lot of times though, we'd call in a helicopter because we were a national resource. They wanted us out of the fire and possibly to jump another fire. So
Yep.
we bring in a helicopter and they drop us a cargo net. And we throw all our cargo in it, and it would haul it off and then come back and pick us up. Or they may just haul off our heavy stuff and we hike out just with our personal gear bag.
Hmm.
So that's just a 40-pound bag.
Sure.
Just hiking out.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, what a great job though. Man, it was a great summer job. I miss it, man. It was a lot of fun, a lot of adventure. Got to jump fires in Alaska, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, California, Washington,
Hmm.
pretty much the Western United States.
The Western United States.
Yeah.
Was there?
Do they just like have a group of guys and then just bring them wherever the fire is?
Yeah, I mean, you get a thunderstorm that goes through, and you'll get a bunch of what they call dry lightning, and I don't know, but they have satellite in the air, whatever, but they can tell where the positive, negative, where it hits. You'll see a little plus mark on on the map, and you'll see a minus, and so those are the positive. Sometimes they ignite, sometimes they don't, um, but you can see, and so wherever the fires are at, and then if they're the reason why they have us because they put us in areas where you can't drive engines to it, and then maybe the helicopters can't reach it. There are helicopter repellers, but even then, I mean, that's actually sometimes I worked with a lot of repellers, and so sometimes that gets because a helicopter, when you're flying it and you have to hover, you're stressing that engine out. And if they're repelling and that they get a burst of wind or whatever, they're like that, and they just drag those guys to the trees.
Oh,
Jeez.
So, yeah, you gotta, repel out fast. So, but the jumping, I have a reserve, I have a main. Yeah, if the plane starts having and doing what it does, I can always jump.
Mm-hmm.
So the pilots have to go down with
Right.
with the plane.
Engine trouble. Good luck, boys.
Well, people are saying you just have a perfectly good airplane. I was like, I don't think there's ever such a thing
I
as
think
a
it's a
perfect.
perfectly good
Yeah,
airplane.
this thing has a hole in the side of it. I mean, the door's off as it's
Yeah.
flying. I'm like, that's not perfectly good.
Sure.
So, but um, yeah, jumping's been around for a long time. The smoke jumpers, they've been around. I think it's 1939. And back then they had silk parachutes. And so they were always worried about grass. I would talk to old jumpers and they say, grasshoppers, you had to keep grasshoppers away from their silk
Oh, because they
parachutes. Yeah. Crack silk. They say, crack silk or whatever.
they start eating it.
Start eating it. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still going on. Now that they got square parachutes and round parachutes. And so they got different things you can do with them, different performances. And
Mm-hmm.
I had never jumped a square parachute. We always had a round parachute. So
Mm.
ours have a static line, so you'd hook inside the plane. So when you jump, the static line would pull your chute out, and then
For you.
yeah, for you. And then you at the end of the parachute, have what they call brake tape, which is looks like shoelaces. But when you hit it, it'd break at 80 pounds. So of course I'm heavier than 80 pounds, so I hit the end of it and it just breaks. And then the back tray stays with the plane, and my parachute deploys, opens up, and I'm in for a ride.
Mm-hmm.
Minute and a half.
But then is that plane then trailing, however many guys jumped, they're trailing all those strands and then
Yeah.
they have to reel them in.
So what they'll do is they'll get to the fire, and the plane might have like it depends on the plane. Like we had
Mhm.
DC-3s that could hold, what was it, 18, 19 jumpers. You have twin otters that would hold 8. You would have a plane that was called a Dornier. Another one is called a Sherpa. It's been a while since I jumped, but
Mm.
anyways, different planes will hold different jumpers or number of jumpers. So when the plane gets to the fire, they'll kind of fly around it, and we'll be looking for a jump spot. And so when we find a jump spot, the plane will fly over the jump spot, and then they'll throw out these things called streamers, and they'll throw them right up over the jump spot. And these streamers fall at the same descent a jumper does. So the idea is, so if this is the jump spot, the plane flies over the jump spot, they drop the streamers, and the streamers, here's a jump spot, but the streamers drift, say, 100 yards past the jump spot. They know now if they come up here and they dump us out 100 yards from the jump spot that we should, if we're like the streamers, we should drift into the jump spot.
Okay.
It's kind of and
It's a
for the
bit of
most
an
part,
art.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's sometimes pilot error. Or, I'm talking about me being the pilot, the jumper,
Yep.
because with our parachutes we can steer them a little bit, but if
Uh-huh.
I hold out too long and then try to go,
Hmm.
you can really hurt yourself. And we're just a bunch of dirt darts, just whack right on the ground. So,
Jeez.
yeah, I had some rough jumps where I hit the ground hard. One time you're
Is
not.
that why guys get out of it? Because it's just like, man, I can't afford another banger on my knee or
I think no. I think guys stay in it. They just have different career.
Hmm.
Another job opens up that pays more money. It's year round because this is only seasonal.
Sure.
So yeah, for me, my passion was art. I did have a plan of being an art teacher and then fighting fire in the summers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then, yeah, got married and changed my whole direction.
Change the trajectory.
Yeah,
That happens from what
but
they
if I
tell
would have
us.
stayed in it, I would be retired now because it has the same retirement system as the federal law enforcement.
Ah,
So, but I didn't. So, darn it.
whoops.
Whoops. But oh well.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was a great job. Yeah, I still keep in contact with a lot of jumpers I jumped with, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Hmm. Can you get back into it, or at this point, there's not really the point?
question. I'd have to start. I'd have to get qualified with wildland fire first.
Hmm.
Um, I wouldn't want to leave the position I'm in now. I mean,
Oh.
I got a great position. I have a lot of freedom. My supervisor's in Worland. Um, he's a good guy. Yeah, I mean, as far as a law enforcement gig, I mean, I'm not 911. So if someone calls 911, they don't call me first. They'd call the sheriff or the police department or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Are
So
you with BIA?
no, I'm with the BLM, Bureau of
Okay,
Land Management.
okay.
So a lot of people say, well, what do you do there? I was like, well, basically, I get involved. I mean, there's some people might argue this, but I get involved whenever the BLM is a victim of a crime. So anything the BLM manages, the resources, so the rocks, the sagebrush, the roads, the campgrounds, anytime that becomes is vandalized or or someone steals things like steals rocks and tries to sell them commercially or
Hmm.
trees and tries to sell them commercially, that's
Mm-hmm.
when I get involved, or driving off road and damaging the whatever the land. People trying to build roads where they're not supposed to build roads, people, homeless people that go out and live on the land, people that camp too long. The sky's the limit. I mean, there's things out there I didn't even think was even a possibility for someone to do. For example, when I was down in St. George, these people were they'd get these camper trailers and go park them on BLM, and then they'd rent them as like what's the word, bed and breakfast type thing, you know?
Like a short-term rental?
Yeah, yeah. They'd take the
Crazy.
camper and park it out there, and then they put it on the internet, and advertise it, and everything's set up for you. Just drive out there and you give them GPS coordinates, and they drive out there. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. But you need a special recreation permit to do that. If you're going to be operating a business on BLM, you need a permit to do that. These people, they didn't have a permit.
Right.
But of course, they try to get a permit, which I'm like, that's the legal way. But then they turn them down. I'm like, that was a good idea.
Mm.
Nope,
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. So,
But yeah, so eventually then you have to drive out there and be like, sorry guys.
oh, I had to make contact with, like, this lady was doing yoga classes out on these rocks, and she was charging people. I'm like, well, you need a special recreation permit. And really, who's the victim? I don't know, government, I guess. But the resource was, I mean, because it wasn't hurting the rocks or anything. So it's just like that's the part. It's just, I know some things you don't agree with, but it's what the law says. So,
Right, right. You have to enforce the law as it's written today, not as you.
well, I got discretion too. So a lot of
Oh.
times, I would say this is a warning. Now you know. So don't do it again, because part of the elements of some of the things we force is I have to show knowing and willfulness. I have to show that they had knowledge of what they did was wrong and they willfully did it.
Mm.
So if I give them a warning and I have it documented, I can show that they had knowledge of what they were doing. And they
Next
went
time.
ahead and did it.
Right.
So now there's willfulness. So I like give warnings. You know, and it's because people, I mean, sometimes you write a citation and people get mad at you, and I'm like, I don't like that. Versus if you let people go, they're happy with you. I like that.
All right, right.
But if they're, my guess for me is if they're compliant. If they're compliant, saying, man, I'm sorry, I had no idea. How can we fix this? Hey, this is where my art brain kicks in. It's like, we can fix it this way.
Mm.
Yes, sir, I'll do it, whatever. And so they do it, and we have a great exchange, and no harm, no foul.
Sure.
It's the people that want to fight with you and disagree. And I'm like, listen, I wouldn't be here if I didn't see this, and you're here, and you did it.
Yep.
You know you did it, and you're basically making it sound like it's my fault. Like, what are you doing here? Well, it's my job to be here, you know?
Sure.
And they
Yeah.
just want to fight you. I'm like, listen, I'll just give you this invitation, this invitation to court, and you can discuss, you can tell the judge all the stuff you're telling me. Um, I'm not saying you're guilty or not. I'm just saying I saw this and it looks to me like you have all the elements of this thing you're not supposed to be doing. And
Right.
so
Right.
try to explain it like that, just
Yeah.
simple, and they're mad. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't know what to
It
tell you.
appears
Yeah.
from everything that I can observe
That's
that
right.
you may be found in violation of the law of the land
Yeah,
if you were to discuss the matter with a judge, which you can do on the 14th
that's
of
right.
August. Yeah.
Have a nice day.
Yeah. 10 p.m. Don't be late. Yeah.
What people don't realize though is what makes my job different, say if like from a cop or deputy, is I'm out there by myself.
Hmm.
And when I contact dispatch, they really don't know where I'm at.
Hmm.
Kind of an idea, but I can't say I'm at like this address and respond here, blah blah blah, and they're here. I gotta say I'm down this road approximately 3 miles, close to wherever. I'm taking a guess,
Okay.
and hopefully there might be a resource in the area that can help. Sometimes that resource is an hour away.
Right.
Sometimes they're 15, but I mean, there's a lot that can happen in 5 and 10 minutes,
Jeez. Yeah.
an hour.
Yeah.
Usually an hour, it's done.
Right.
So the
Your
gift,
body could be buried in an hour.
right?
Yeah.
So the gift of gab, being able to, like I said, trust your stomach. If it's not good, it's not good. I mean, this guy's just out in the middle of sagebrush anyway, so I'll just back away and have a nice day, sir. And then I'll go get more help, and then we'll come back and we'll do what we need to do. But
Hmm.
I don't have to deal with it right then. But it can go from 0 to 100 real fast. And the idea I don't have backup makes it a different
A
ball
little
game.
dicier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's a sort of like a human survival instinct that's
I think so. Yeah.
sort of chiseled in by evolution, right?
I don't know if it's the man upstairs talking to you. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It could be, who knows? I listen to it though. I
Uh-huh.
listen to it. I trust it. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
Hmm.
I'm still alive. So
Hmm. Well,
yeah.
speaking of, do you have any specific memories of times you thought, I think this is it. This is where I die. Like either by fire or in law enforcement?
Oh yeah. There's this time I jumped to fire. Um, it all starts that way. I jumped to
I
fire.
jumped to fire.
So it was the jump spot on the top of this mountain, and the wind was really squirrely, so they were doing what they call single person sticks. So
Hmm.
one person's jumping. Typically, you jump out in two people, but and that jump spot was really small, so I think I was like the fourth guy out. I can't remember, but I jumped out, totally missed the jump spot, and it was like on top of this mountain where it was clearing, and then had the sides and he had all these trees. Well, I missed the jump spot. I was coming down. Well, they train you if you know you're going to hit a tree, pick a good tree. Pick one that's green. Don't pick the snags, the dry ones, because the limbs will break and you'll burn out and possibly, fall 30, 40, 60 feet, whatever. And so I was in line with this one tree and I'm like, I'm going to pick that guy. He looks pretty green. And so I hit it with the top of my feet. This is going to sound crazy, but I hit it with the top of my feet and it kind of acted like a spring. So I hit it.
Like with your shoelaces kind of thing? Like,
Yeah, with like, well, you want to point your toes because you want to, if you're going to hit a tree, you want to be like a dart and go through it, and
okay.
hopefully your canopy will catch the top of the tree and hang you up in the tree so you don't hit the ground.
Okay.
Yeah, but as soon as you hit the tree, your weight comes off the canopy and you'll start dumping air in that canopy. That's the only thing that's holding that air in that canopy is your weight. As soon as your weight comes up, that canopy
That canopy wants to
will
collapse.
collapse. Yeah, it'll dump the air.
Yep.
And so as soon as I hit the top of that tree, it kind of did this. I hit it, it sprung back, and then it flung me forward. But by then, the air had collapsed out of my parachute. So I'm free falling with my back going down to the tree. And I remember seeing branches, and you didn't want to keep your arms in, you don't want to keep your arms out. And I remember thinking, I was like, oh, this is the day. This is when I'm gonna land on the back of my head and I'm gonna be dead. I was like, I guess this is the day. And it's crazy in that short amount of time, all the things that go through your mind. And then I had a flashback of my old fire management officer. His name was Carl Brown Eyes. He broke his back on a jump. And I thought about him saying, "Yeah, I broke my back on a jump," and I'm like, I'm gonna break something. And I just heard this voice, "Not yet," and I flung out from the tree, and there's the ground, and I hit the ground, and like I said, I dug a trench with my feet, just, and I kind of did this number flip flow, and I remember thinking I had to star out like a starfish, and I stopped, and I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. I mean, all that thing that happened in your mind in that split second.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the tree, and I'm like, how did that happen? There's no way. What flipped me upside down like that? What flipped me right side up where my feet were pointed down? I don't know. But just that crazy. There's yeah, yeah.
Yep. Yep. That you have this less than a second episode in
Oh,
which you review everything about your
everything.
life
Oh
and your
yeah.
person. Right.
There was another time I had to tase a guy. Um, I came around the corner. He had a knife. His sister had snuck in the house unbeknownst to me, ran behind him. He went after her. She ran to the door, opened the door, and she's holding the door open. And I had a taser, and I come around the corner, and I put the taser up, and I pointed at him. And just as soon as I pointed at him, it's like time stopped. And I remember thinking, if this taser doesn't work, I'm gonna let go of the taser, leave it in the air because it's gonna be in the air. I'm gonna have to grab my sidearm and get to stop this guy because he's gonna stab his sister. And anyways, I tased him, and the taser, the two probes hit him. He, locked up, dropped the knife. He actually landed on the knife. His sister ran out of the way, and I kept the taser going because I didn't know where the knife was, and I kept locking him up. And another officer came in there, and we got on top of him, got him in handcuffs, and so the taser sometimes, if you tase somebody enough, they'll shit themselves. They'll crap their pants.
Oh yeah.
Looked over at my
Because it stops control of the muscles.
well, no, actually, it's like it tenses you up. It's like,
Uh-huh.
you ever had those things on your arms that cause your muscles to twitch?
Okay.
Imagine
Sure.
that cranked all the way up
Cranked all the way.
because you can actually feel the cycles go through your body. It's like zip, and you just locked up. Yeah, it's
Okay, so
all these
you
muscles
just squeeze your abdomen and you just sharp.
well, and I kept tasing him because I didn't know where the knife was, and
Uh-huh.
I kept tasing him. Well, he ended up shitting himself, and we got the handcuffs on him. I looked across my buddy. I'm like, did you fart or something? And he's like, no. And then he points down and looked at his pants, and they were just big brown spiders.
Oh!
And I'm like, oh, but then there was blood everywhere because he had the knife, and he was intoxicated, and he was mad at his family, so he took the knife and slammed it down the table. Well, his hand slid down the blade and sliced all his fingers. And then he grabbed the knife and was flipping around and moving, and blood was everywhere.
hmm
I mean, it looked like a murder scene in there when this guy just cut his fingers.
Right.
It's crazy how time slows down like that. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But for me, I know the next couple days, it was like, we call it like a come to Jesus meeting where I was like,
Mm.
I was going to shoot that guy. I was actually going to shoot him. And wow, just,
I didn't have to, but
well,
I was on that road.
yeah, just the mentally, just, that you were going to do it and taking a life, and everybody talks about it. But when you're there, it's like, it's different.
hmm
And to know that you were going to do that you were going to become that person, that's where, oof, that was like I said. And then I had this FBI agent to come in, and he used to be a highway patrolman officer or a highway patrol, and then he became an agent. He had the same thing. He didn't shoot the guy, but he kind of had the same reflection. And he goes, I just kind of came to terms that in this job that I'm probably going to have a high chance of shooting somebody, and I need to know that. I need to know
hmm
that and come to terms with that and be able to accept it. And yeah, I mean, that's what I had to do. And I'm almost to retirement, knock on wood. I haven't had to do it.
Yep.
And if I can get through this career without having to do it, it was a good career.
Uh-huh.
Close, but I've tased people, pepper sprayed them.
Never had to go
No.
to that next level.
Down to wrestling has helped out a bunch.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so
Do you have to take that?
no, no,
Okay.
it was my family member that was trying to get a hold of me, and
Okay.
um, they can wait.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You were telling me you wrestled in high school
I wrestled high school and college.
and college.
So high
Okay.
school and then junior college and then Division II school. And
Wow.
yeah,
Bet you don't miss cutting weight.
no,
No.
no, no. It was tough in high school just because I think I was growing. College, it was, I was more educated on it. I still did it stupid, but
Hmm.
yeah, it wasn't fun. I try to cut 6 pounds in a morning or something. It's just,
Jeez.
yeah, it's miserable. I don't wish that on anybody.
Yeah.
But it builds a different mindset,
Hmm.
you know, which makes it, when you get into something like smoke jumping where you have to hump out a bunch of weight or whatever, it's like you're not afraid to do it.
Is it a skill set of that you know that your mind can tell your body to do something and like your mind can execute? Is that the skill you feel that
I
it
don't know if
built?
I think it's more of a mindset.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a mindset. Okay.
Mindset. Yeah, I think it's a mindset that you build because you know that you've been through worse. Um, the other day I was listening to something with David Goggins, and he said something that I wrote down. He goes, "I'm not gifted. I'm just driven."
Mm-hmm.
And it's that mindset. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna put myself through the worst pain possible. Just like I can do it." And I'm like, "Gosh, there's something to be said. He's not gifted. He's not an athlete. He's just got mindset of like iron, where he's just gonna get through it." Um, uh, you know, I think I need to work on that.
Sure. Sure. We all do, but I think
Yeah,
wrestling might be at least the sport that's generally available to most high schoolers that it seems to me is most likely to create that
yeah.
mindset
So
just because of those physical cycles of I am going to do X
yeah.
in the face of very, very physical and immediate opposition.
Well, if you
So,
want to be successful, I mean, if you want to be successful, you have to train hard.
mm-hmm,
You gotta take that next step.
mm-hmm,
Because unless you want to go out there and get beat up, because there's going to be someone out there that's going to be in better shape than you, that's going to have a better gas tank, and they're not only going to score more points on you, they're going to beat you up. I mean, literally, you're going to walk off the mat hurt.
yep.
And so that was my biggest fear, is not being prepared. You know, um, so I always had a good gas tank. I ran a lot, so I could go to that third and that overtime round if I need to be. But I was more of a brawler.
So your cardio is always is
Yeah,
pretty good
I
compared to
just
your peers.
yeah, I just wasn't. It wasn't until I got to college that I started understanding, defensive wrestling and offensive wrestling, and where to be, where you want to be at. I was always go out there and brawl,
Uh-huh.
just beat him till submission.
Kill him.
Kill him, fight us back, and then I started coaching. I'm like, what was I thinking? Go out there and score the points. The pin will be there. If it's there, it's there. But just score the points, put
Hmm.
yourself in good. So maybe the third period comes around, you're up so much that he's put in a position where he's gotta make moves. Now you can be a little bit more of a defensive wrestler
Mm-hmm.
and score off of his mistakes
Yep.
and put him in that mindset where he starts going down, and you can see him. You'll see kids that don't they're down by 5 and they come back at third period and they're desperate and they're taking shots and shots and they're missing, the other guy's scoring. Now he's getting more and more point spread, and they eventually break them. They're just like, I can't do anything, coach. And so,
Mm.
but um, yeah, I think I'm so glad I did wrestling. So
How did a kid who was interested in drawing all the time get into something so physical and athletic?
I think growing up, I had an older brother who used to beat the snot out of me every morning, every day. And so I don't know. I just like the wrestling. I never, I mean, team sports, sometimes I thought it got political. Certain parents had influence or whatever. And so
I'm
I,
amazed at the stories I hear today.
yeah,
Yeah, like you'd think you'd put the most talented kid in the position where they are the most likely to score. Nope.
nope,
Nope. Something about because her dad
exactly.
sells cars at this dealership, therefore
Hmm.
we're gonna have the other person play defense.
Yeah.
She's like, what?
Yeah. Nope. With wrestling, I can get out there and I just beat them.
Mm-hmm.
Track, same thing. Just outrace them, outbeat them. It's faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, team sports, just didn't. I don't. So yeah, that and I like the grind. I like
Mm-hmm.
pushing myself. I remember I had a buddy of mine that was fighting fire, and he talked about he worked on a helitac crew, and they were on a fire, and the helicopter can't get back to him, and he had to stay the night on the fire on the ground with no sleeping bag, no nothing. And he told me about it. And he was like, I was miserable, it's cold, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want
Mm.
to see if I can do that.
Mm.
And I just got a chance to do it when I was smoke jumping because we jumped a fire and they threw us our jump gear. So we'll jump a fire and then they'll come back in and do a cargo drop and they'll drop our stuff. Well, from the air, it looked like a bunch of little trees, right? But in the ground, it was tall trees on a steep slope. And so we hit the ground, we couldn't find our jump gear. And we looked and looked and it got dark. So we just kind of had to sleep on the ground. It was cold. I mean, it was all right. We built a little fire. And so the next morning we ordered up a helicopter to come get our stuff, but the helicopter didn't come on before 9. Of course, we were up almost all night.
Ugh.
We got up at 5 as soon as the sun was up. Started looking around. We found our jump gear,
Mm-hmm.
got our stuff. We had breakfast, went to the fire, put the fire out. We did it all before 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
The helicopter contacted us like, yeah, you can come pick us up now. We called the fire out. We found our jump gear. We already got it out.
Right. Right.
It's a happy ending.
Right.
Started off horrible, but had a happy ending. So
That's the way you want things to
yeah,
go.
but I like that. I like pushing myself, seeing what I can tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
So, even with the artwork, I like to push myself
Mm.
to big pieces, to bigger the better.
Yep.
So
Right.
Reminds me of we had a gentleman on BP McCoy,
mhm.
retired lieutenant colonel, and he does these things called Sufferfests,
Mm,
where he picks like 3 days of the year, and he said he just goes to try to do the hardest thing. He like goes to the desert, like does like all this hiking, or he goes to like a really cold area, sees how long he can
yeah,
stay
it
awake and things like that. And
Right.
he says it keeps him sharp, you know.
does. I think it does. I think you learn something a lot about yourself. When I went to Europe, Um, so I was smoke jumping and I was teaching, and I really want to go to Europe and see the artwork. Was always a goal of mine. So, and I had an old teacher say, do it now because when you get married, you're not gonna be able to do it. You can always come back to teaching. So for me, I was like, that's what I need to hear.
Hmm.
So I resigned from teaching, jumped that summer, and then I went to Europe. Um, I could
France, Spain,
I
Italy.
started off in London,
Uh-huh.
went to France, went up to Brussels, Amsterdam, then back down to Spain, and then Italy. I hit Italy because I really like the Renaissance stuff. So I hit Milano, and Venice, Florence, Rome, Siena, Carrara, Pisa. Um, and just hit the cathedrals. Loved it. Loved it. I couldn't speak any of the languages. All I had was a little book, and so I'd practice them over and over. I'd try to sound like them, like the Italians. Mi dispiace. I remember saying that. It was like,
Mm.
I'm sorry, I had my foot up on this train seat. This old guy came on, he said something Italian and pointed at my foot, and I just spewed it out. Mi dispiace. And he's like, oh, no, no. It's like, I can't believe I said it like that. That was that
Mm-hmm.
fast. Um, but I learned a lot about myself, that I can go 3 days without talking to somebody. You know, I had my sketchbooks. I'd go to the museums or the cathedrals and do, see all the work and then come back and sketch the pieces I really liked and then um, go back the next day and do it again. And just do that all day long, going to these different museums. And there's a lot of artwork that I saw that was in the art history books, but there's a lot more artwork that I didn't see that I learned a lot from, you know.
There's something about going to the museums or the galleries or the cathedrals in person where you realize, oh, like 10%? No, 1% makes it into the Jansen's history of art,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
Like this is 1% of what's out there,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, it's like I went to the Vatican City and there's a museum there, and
Oh,
I
okay.
heard someone say, "This is only a fraction of the work. The work they have inside these walls and other places is just, I mean, it's just filled." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh,
Right.
crazy."
Right. Then you ask, well, do they want to give any of it away?
Yeah.
Because if it's not on display, then
No.
why is it? Can we spread the wealth a little? Yeah, spread the wealth a little bit.
Well,
Yeah.
then I was walking to the Sistine Chapel, and one of the things I noticed is like the floor, the marble, how worn down it was.
Yes.
The channel. But then I got there, and I'm like, gosh, Michelangelo, he for what he was paid, and then over the years, how much what they charge to go through the door. I'm like, my gosh, I wonder if his descendants can put in like a
Right. The Vatican's done. The
what
Vatican's done well,
they done
given what
over
they
the
paid
years.
him
Yeah.
versus what they've charged people to go. Yeah, in for the 2.5 minutes that you're allowed to stay in there.
But
Yeah.
what a good point. When I'm selling artwork, I'll bring up stuff like that. I was like, with schools, I'll say, if you think about it, this will be the one thing that you'll invest in that will gain value over time.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
Right.
Whether you can say dollar amount or just, you know, um, more of like a historical value. It's true. The longer it sits there, and it could be the ugliest piece of artwork. Some kid's gonna jump on it, fall off, have that memory. He's gonna get old, tell his kid, and all of a sudden that has a value to it.
Right.
It really does. The Statue of Liberty, all the immigrants coming across. You talk about doesn't really function. I mean, it's not even a lighthouse, but what does it mean?
Sure.
Well, I mean, if you put a price on it, what would you value that at?
Right.
You really can't because it has that history to it. It's got that value to it.
Right.
And so, I can't compete with new gym floors or new computers or any of that. I can't because those actually have a function and they provide a service.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could sit here all day long, but my sculptures really don't provide a service that you can like calculate or measure. But
Point two. Yeah.
but I mean, when you talk about symbolism, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, even the United States flag, people burn it and that gets people mad. And it's just a piece of cloth, but it's a symbol.
Sure.
And what's the value of that? So some people get it, some people, well, whatever, it's just artsy fartsy stuff. And I don't know.
Right. But if someone was to say, well, what service does your statue of a lion, excuse me, of a tiger provide? You'd say that's not really the right question. The question is, it's not a matter of value or service, it's a matter of enrichment,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah. And I'll say, if you look back in history, you look at all your seniors when they graduate, every one of them's going to have a picture in front of that thing. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a senior moment. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's the things
Yeah,
that people choose
exactly.
to remember, and why is it that art sticks with us in that way? No one's going to stand next to the computer in the computer lab.
Well, and you say it's not important, but I guarantee the next time you have to build a high school, a big discussion is what's going to happen with this sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have people fighting over it.
Yep.
And sometimes those fights might even get violent. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really violent. I'm like, oh, for what? A piece of metal? But it's
Mm.
that symbol.
It's something else.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when you talk about is it important or not, when you put it there, it becomes
It
important.
become yes, yes.
So,
Right, but it is true that service or value, it's like you're not even on the right axis,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Why do we put up Christmas trees? Like,
yeah,
what's the point of a
yeah.
Christmas tree? It's
Mhm.
like, well, does it? Do you have to say it has a point? That's almost not the right way to look at something. It's better. Life is
Mhm.
better with Christmas trees.
Exactly.
Why? It's kind of hard to say,
Yeah.
but if one has to articulate it,
Mhm.
you'd say, well, this really enshrines something that goes beyond the dollar value.
Yeah. Yeah. Art's been around. They're finding pieces that I was just looking on the internet a while back. They found this stick in the mountains of Russia. It was the Ural Mountains.
Yeah,
It was
that's right.
11,000 years old.
Uh-huh.
I'm like 11,000. It had these carvings and these symbols on it. It's been going on a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
Oh.
yeah, so certainly predates the historical record,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I just love it.
I love it. Deek, thank you so much for joining
Oh,
us
thanks.
tonight.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of some of the stories, but we'll have to have you back. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's lots of stories. It's like with the
Exactly.
law enforcement stories. It's like people ask me, tell them a story. I'm like, I don't know, come up with a subject because it'll trigger a memory.
Exactly. Right. Right. People, yeah, you can't say something like, "Oh, well, what's your most exciting story?" You gotta hone in your questions a
Oh,
little bit
yeah.
to get people like thinking along a certain line.
It's like you
So,
want to go, you want to go bad, you want to go like a happy story or
right.
a gross one that's funny.
Yeah,
What do you want? You want to, what do you want? And
exactly.
I have a friend, his name's Caleb, and he's a nurse in town, and he's been all over the country as a
yeah,
traveling nurse. And it's like, okay, categories. You want to laugh, cry, or barf?
that's right. That's a
Yeah.
good one. That's exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I
Yeah.
like that. All right, perfect. Well, next time you're here, we'll open with that. Like, all right. Are we here to laugh, cry, or barf? Good.
Deal.
Thanks so much for your time, man. We appreciate it.
You bet.